This episode is brought to you by Peacock. The new Peacock original documentary, Matthew Perry, A Hollywood Tragedy, dives deep into the beloved actor's rise to fame and his tragic death. 5 people, including Perry's personal assistant, 2 medical doctors, and an alleged Hollywood drug dealer known as the Ketamine Queen, were charged with conspiracy to illegally provide Perry with the ketamine. Explore the details of the case in this heartbreaking special, streaming now only on Peacock.
Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, it is spring break season, and if you're hosting family or friends, you might need some help planning a great Pittsburgh itinerary, especially if you've already hit up some of the classics like the Warhol or the Natural History Museum. So we are bringing back our conversation with CityCast contributor and travel writer Meg St. Esprit to help you pick the perfect activities, whether someone's visiting for the first time or the 30th. It's Monday, March 10th. I'm Mallory Fulk, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. Meg, welcome back to CityCast.
Thanks for having me. This is one of my favorite topics. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I've heard that you're maybe a go-to person for helping people plan a family itinerary.
Definitely. I get that request a lot from friends. Part of the work I do as a journalist is I do a lot of travel writing. So we go to a lot of cities to visit them, do weekend guides. We put a lot of those on Pittsburgh. But I feel like that's given me a really good perspective on being a tourist in my own city, right? Like, what are the good things to hit? And so I'm definitely known for throwing together a little itinerary for friends and family when they ask.
Well, I'm glad that you can help share this with an even larger audience today.
Yeah.
So we're kind of going to split this up into 3 different categories. One is your recommendations for where to take first-time visitors who have, never set foot in Pittsburgh. One is for people who might be coming in for their second or third time. So you've kind of done the more expected stuff and need to dig a little deeper. And then we're going to get into people who have visited a ton. Maybe they live close by, and so they pop in all the time, and what to do with them once you've really kind of crossed off the standard spots. So, Meg, why don't you kick us off with some of your top recommendations for those first-time visitors who are brand new to our city?
Yeah, that's always one that's most exciting for me because I honestly love to show off our city. We've had the chance to move away many times, and we've chosen not to. And so when someone comes and they've never been here, it's like getting to introduce them to the love of your life for the first time, right? We almost always start with the Strip District for out-of-town visitors because, not only can you see downtown, can you see the rivers, can you kind of get the whole swath of what the city looks like? It's just so iconic in the vendors that are there, the history that's there, the changes that are there that even show how the city's evolving.
Right.
That is definitely the number one place we like to go. And we have a couple different things we like to do there depending on who's visiting. The Bergs and Bites tour in the Strip District, where you get to go behind the scenes at some of the local eateries and find out the story behind them, is always a plus. Studebaker Metals is another newer business that just moved to the Strip District, though they've been in the city for a while. They do tours. They teach about metalworking. It's a really beautiful bridge into the history of steel in the city and what metalworking looks like today. I could go on and on about the Strip. That's my number one for visitors, absolutely.
That is a great call because you're right. You really can there are parts of the Strip that feel like you're stepping into another time and a different era in Pittsburgh. And then you're really seeing kind of the direction the city is moving in and some of the newer development. So you really get a lot of eras of Pittsburgh in one stop when you're in the Strip. And, when I take visitors there, that's also a perfect location to get maybe the most iconic Pittsburgh meal, Pamela's Pancakes.
Yes, absolutely.
And a Permani sandwich if you really want a double feature.
For sure. Yeah, and if you do the Bergs and Bites tour, or there's a lot of great tours in the city, but you kind of get a sampling of things. They have pepperoni rolls and cheese and prosciutto and so many things that they make just in the Strip that I didn't even realize, and I've lived here my whole life.
Okay, so once you've hit the Strip, where do you go?
The second place we always stop is the Duquesne Incline. It's a hit with kids. Adults love it.
Classic.
It's just classic. If you're up for it, when you get to the top, you can walk down to Shiloh Street for some ice cream. One time we had our kids and guests with kids try to walk to Coughlin's Law in August. That's an amazing restaurant, but I would not suggest trying to walk that far with a 5-year-old.
Yeah, probably that's for the older children in your life.
Absolutely. But I mean, there's so many good spots to eat up there if you want to eat, or you can just ride to the top, look at the museum, take a picture with that famous skyline and come back down. It's simple, it's quick, and it packs a big punch, I think.
Okay, do you tend to take visitors on an incline ride during the day or at night when all the lights are out? Because they're both great options, and I'm always torn, like when is the ideal time to take people on a ride?
Yeah, I've actually thought about this in depth. So I feel like when we have visitors with children, we like to go during the day because you can see the boats and the trains and the barges, and it's like watching an episode of Thomas the Train or Blippi or something. Mm-hmm. There's a lot going on from up there. But if you have adult guests that maybe don't care about that so much, I mean, you cannot beat that nighttime view. It's romantic, it's exciting, it's beautiful. So I think it's kind of a game day decision based on who you have visiting.
Now that there's the light displays on the Three Sister Bridges, it's especially beautiful to take a nighttime incline ride.
Absolutely. I love those.
Okay, so we've got the strip, we've got the incline. What is next on your first-time visitor itinerary?
We have a lot of really great museums here. We all know the Carnegies, the Heinz, they're all wonderful. I really like to take visitors to Randyland. I just feel like part of the reason Pittsburgh is so special is that it's quirky. I just saw someone on Threads say that it's like New York City had a quirky Appalachian baby. And I felt like that was really accurate. And so Randyland, to me, it's tucked into the Mexican War Streets, already one of our most iconic neighborhoods.
Perfect for just taking a little stroll.
Right. Yeah. So Randyland is the reason you're going there. But while you're in the north side, stopping at some takeout at Carmi's, check out the library over there, which is phenomenal. There's the Children's Museum, New Hazlet Theater. It's a great area to do things with visitors. But Randy standing there almost all of the time, chatting with people, telling the history of his property. It's just a classic Yinzer spot to me. And I've never taken a visitor who didn't love it. I will say some of them were like, what do you mean we're going to play in an artist's backyard? I'm like, no, like you need to see it to believe it. And it always wins them over. It really does.
Yeah, and it's actually also right across from the Mattress Factory, which that's usually like my duo that I take people to. We stop into the Mattress Factory and then head over to Randyland. And it's just this day full of like every form of modern art you could imagine.
I love that. I actually haven't been to the Mattress Factory in a while just because my kids are younger and there's a lot of breakable stuff. But it is a really great museum. Yeah, for sure. And exactly, while you're over there, there's so many things you could walk to. Even if you don't want to go into the National Aviary, there's birds that they have outside that you can see. So it's really a walkable, fun community.
Okay, so that's your itinerary the first time someone comes into town. Now let's move on to people who've been here before. They've had, their first spin around Pittsburgh. Where do you like to go on like the second, third visit?
I think that when someone's been here and we've hit all the main stops, it's a really great time to introduce them to some of the smaller neighborhoods. I live in Bellevue. We have a great light up night. There are parades and events and festivals through the summer like Rhythm and Brews. I know Canonsburg does a really classic Christmas. Swickley has so many of these. There's lots of little communities in the East End. And so I think if you're bringing them back here for the second time, it's time to really dig into maybe a community you really love and show them some of your favorite stops in Shadyside or what you really love in Squirrel Hill and kind of hone in on one area. That's one of my favorite things to do.
I love that. One of my favorite ways to introduce visitors to the different neighborhoods in our city is to do a city step tour with Miss Steps, aka Laura Zarowski. So she offers these guided tours that are based around different sets of city steps in different neighborhoods. So this is for people who kind of have the stamina to climb up some pretty steep public stairways to learn about the city, but she packs this incredible history lesson into every tour. And so you get to walk through a neighborhood, learn about what our region used to look like, learn about public steps being the very first form of public transit in our city. And that is when I definitely bring visitors on. Again, if they can endure the hikes up the stairs and if the weather is nice enough.
I've actually never heard of that, and that sounds incredible. I'm a big fan of the Death Stairs group on Facebook where Pittsburgh is a main character. And so I think I need to do that tour for sure. On my lunch break every day, I walk on a pair of city steps in Bellevue on Summit Avenue. And it is just, so classically Pittsburgh, right?
Yeah. Arguably the most classic Pittsburgh activity.
Yeah, absolutely.
So besides just kind of exploring different neighborhoods and all the little nooks and crannies of the city, what else do you like to do with people who've been here once or twice before?
Yeah, so I think if you can time it right, there's a couple really neat architectural tours. The Gateway Clipper has one, and then Doors Open Pittsburgh is another organization that does those. And they do things like come see what's inside of a skyscraper behind the scenes and different things like that. And so definitely depends on the time of year your visitors are coming and what season it is. But I think some of those architecture tours that really look at how we built this city are a really great thing to take a visitor on. Maybe not so much for kids, but if you have, like your parents in town or your siblings or something like that, that would be interested in a little background on how we built this city.
I love that. A lot of my in-laws visit from the Southwest, where like a lot of the architecture is quite new. Like if something was built before 1980, that's really historic. And so they're always blown away learning about the architecture in our city. So I think especially if you have visitors who haven't lived in one of these cities with a lot of older, more historic architecture, it can be really fascinating for them to get to experience the city through an architecture tour.
Absolutely. And I know, again, even having grown up here, we did one and they were explaining what all of the different symbols mean on one of the bridges. And I've driven over that bridge since I was born and had never stopped to look at, the very unique paintings and decorations on the bridge. And so I think it's really great to show visitors and maybe even learn along with them if you don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. Some of my favorite activities are ones where I learned Pittsburgh history that maybe I learned in second grade and forgot about, or maybe I was never exposed to. So these tours really have something for everyone, regardless of the amount of time you've been in Pittsburgh or your knowledge of the city.
Yes.
Okay, so what about if you want just like one specific site to go to? Maybe like walking around and going on a guided tour isn't quite your thing?
I think that the August Wilson Center, which is downtown, is kind of overlooked for visitors, but their museum, which goes through the life of August Wilson and takes you through his plays like Fences, which tells the story of Black life in the Hill District. It is incredible. And when I talk to Pittsburghers, very few of them have been to that museum or seen a show at the August Wilson Center. So I really think if you're looking for an in-depth look at one iconic Pittsburgher, I would definitely recommend the August Wilson Center. It's right downtown. There's a parking garage right by it. And I'll say the museum at the August Wilson Center is terrific, but it's not very big. So you can do it in an hour or so and then still have plenty of time to hit up other sites downtown.
Today's show is supported by the Frick Pittsburgh Museum and Gardens and their newest exhibition, Kara Walker, Harper's Pictorial History of the Civil War Annotated. The CityCast crew just checked it out. It's so vivid. There are 15 panels from artist Kara Walker. If you're not familiar with her work, in this series, she places black silhouettes on top of old Harper's Weekly engravings. It's easy to forget now, but back in the day, illustrations like these were the main way a lot of people interpreted what it meant to be at war. There is a lot of patriotism and not a lot of the many free and enslaved Black men and women who lived and fought and died during this war too. Also, the prints are paired with other Harper's Weekly illustrations, so you truly get a sense of how these stories were being told at the time. And because it's the Frick, a small bonus, they actually had the original bound copies of these Harper's Weekly illustrations. Like they were just in the house, handy, ready to go, and perfect for a show like Kara Walker's. The whole experience is just such a striking and visual reminder of what you often don't see in depictions of things like the Civil War. We highly recommend it. Get your tickets to Kara Walker, Harper's Pictorial History of the Civil War Annotated, now through May 25th. And learn more at thefrickpittsburgh.org. CityCast Pittsburgh is brought to you today by Kesem. An estimated 5 million children are coping right now with a parent's cancer diagnosis. Being a kid is hard enough without extra anxiety or feelings of isolation or hopelessness that can come from really heavy stuff and just trying to process their caregiver's medical treatment. That's why Kesem is trying to support these kids with fun, creative, free programs and a summer camp that help uplift them no matter matter what comes next. And Kesem needs you to help them make the magic. Make the Magic is Kesem's annual fundraising gala where they bring local folks together for an evening of storytelling and performance, and most importantly, the chance to make a real difference for Pittsburgh kids. There are 2 opportunities for Make the Magic coming up. Kesem at the University of Pittsburgh is celebrating March 21st at Pitt's University Club, and Kesem at Carnegie Mellon University is throwing their gala the very next day, March 22nd, at the Convention Center downtown. Pick your team, Pitt or CMU, or hey, go to both. Get your tickets now at donate.kesem.org/PittsburghMTM25 or donate.kesem.org/CMUMTM25. Again, that's Kesem, Kesem, and be part of something truly magical. Make the magic, change a life.
Okay, so now let's say you have somebody who, comes to visit multiple times a year. They've been to Pittsburgh so many times, you're really running out of things to do with them, but you don't just want to sit at home the whole long weekend. What do you tend to recommend to people in that situation?
That's definitely a trickier one for sure. Sometimes people that are returning have a place they want to go back to, like, oh, we really liked when we went to the South Side and went to Pinn's Mechanical and took Permani's Takeout. That was great. And I'm like, sure, we'll do it again. But if we're looking for something new, I do try to look for something that's maybe actually new. So we've been visiting the High Line, which is a new area of the South Side. There's Sly Fox Brewing. There's some coffee shops. Color Park is there. You could take a couple cans of spray paint and let them literally leave their mark on the city. So I think that's kind of neat. If they've been here a lot, take them to something that maybe wasn't here last time they were here. That's just one example. But we've got, Bakery Square is bringing more and more events all the time, different things like that to kind of show them how the city's evolving is really interesting. And then another thing I like to do to really highlight how the city is changing is look at some of the new industries that are here. So Moonshot Museum on the north side, which is a project of Astrobotic, an aerospace company that's based in Pittsburgh, is super cool. It's an interactive museum. You can put a message onto one of the products that they are sending to the moon, whether it's a lunar rover or another piece of equipment. So I feel like that kind of shows where Pittsburgh's heading. Like we have this really industrial past, but we have this neat future where we have a place in space. It's great for kids. It's interesting for adults. It's really, really worth it.
You mentioned Pittsburgh's industrial past. What about visitors who want to learn more about that? People who really like stepping back in time.
Yeah. Have you been to Carrie Blast Furnace for anything yet? It is so fun.
I have not, and I feel like that is a personal failing because everyone I know who's been there raves about it. It sounds phenomenal. I need to make a trip there. Maybe my visitors who are coming in a few weeks, this will be my time to finally go to Carrie Blast Furnace. But make your pitch to me and to everyone else who hasn't been yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, if you want to go, I'm willing to go with you because I will always go back. But there's nothing that's more classic than going to a steel mill for an event, right? And they did have classes and tours. They had last year at one point we looked at, it was like forge and sip. Like you could make a bottle opener out of metal while having some snacks and drinks with the other participants. There's big scale events, like they have a festival of combustion one time a year, but they have stuff going on all of the time. And so, yeah, I think it's really, when you go there, it's very awe-inspiring to see how massive these mills were and think how they used to just cover the city. So it also kind of brings you back to that resurgence story, right? These were everywhere. And now we have a space race. And now we have these new waterfront developments, and all of this kind of shows you where we've been and where we're going all at once. I love that they're reusing a historical site for modern purposes.
That sounds perfect. So, Meg, you've shared some of the places that you're sure to hit with visitors, but I want to create a space for honorable mentions. Maybe we can just do some rapid fire, other spots you love, other spots you would recommend people take their family or friends who are in town for a long weekend or two.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I could probably make a list that was a mile long, but I'll stick to my favorites that are within, an hour or so of the city. Falling Water, Frank Lloyd Wright. We are very lucky to have his most iconic property not too far out of the city in the Laurel Highlands.
That's a great one, too, if your visitors are into hiking, because there are so many great spots you can go to around that there. Like hiking in the Laurel Highlands is beautiful, so you can take a little trip and really make like a full day out of it.
Definitely. And there's the Great Allegheny Passage, Laurel Caverns, which is another one that was on my list that we just love. And then you did mention hiking. So our favorite hiking trail that has a little bit of history is the Mineral Springs Loop at Raccoon Creek State Park in Beaver County. There used to be a hotel at the top of the falls, and rich Pittsburghers would go for the quote unquote healing waters. I guess they've tested them since and nothing's really healing about them. But it's really beautiful. And it's beautiful in the winter when it's frozen.
It's healing in maybe in a non-medical sense, but just like for the soul.
Right. It's healing through nature. Yeah. And you can play in it in the summer. You can see it frozen in the winter. It's a year-round hike. It's easy. It's flat. If you have relatives that are if you have older relatives or kids, it's an easy flat hike.
And then how about anything a little bit closer to home? What are some other spots you want to make sure you shout out?
I think anytime you can get a visitor on a boat ride, you should definitely do it because it's the best way to see the city. So whether that is on, a chartered Gateway Clipper tour, or you can rent a Pittsburgh party pontoon that has a driver. It's really neat to see the stadiums from the river. There's tiki boats. There's a lot of chartered boats in the city. If you just do a quick Google search, I did an article on Pittsburgh City Paper on boat life in Pittsburgh without a boat. So many options. Even kayaks through like Venture Kayak.
Yeah, I love taking people kayaking when they come to visit because I assume this is rare. I guess I haven't really done my research, but being able to kayak like in the downtown of a city surrounded by tall buildings and skyscrapers is such a unique experience. I love that. And, this isn't quite the right time of year for this, but if you have visitors come during baseball season, a pro tip is to do a boat tour or rent a kayak like during a Pirates game, because then sometimes you can see fireworks from the water when there's a home run.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, we did the Pittsburgh party pontoons during the Journey concert this summer, and we were singing along from the river with all the other people on boats. It was like a religious experience for a Yinzer. It was incredible.
That sounds so perfect.
Yeah, definitely boat tours. Honestly, any walking tour, bus tour, boat tour, I think I said this already, have not done a bad one. And then if you are looking for a little bit of a drive, the Allegheny Portage Railroad Museum, which is a National Historic Site, kind of more towards Johnstown, is absolutely worth a day trip for visitors. It is hands down one of the coolest. I don't want to just call it a museum because it's really interactive and really big and explains how they built Pittsburgh, how they got things over the mountains before we had trains, Horseshoe Curve and all of that. So that is one that is really worth a day trip. And we also really just love all of our small theaters, small music venues and shows, from the Lindsay and Swickley to New Hazlet Theater on the north side, the Byam. There are so many great places to catch a show where you don't need to pay Broadway ticket prices if you don't want to take someone to the Benedum. So I think it's really great to try to snag one of those shows for visitors.
These are such great recommendations. I hope anybody who's been really stressed out about their visitors coming in and how they're going to occupy their time, I hope they're leaving with some great ideas. Meg St. Esprit is a CityCast contributor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun to talk about.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. Don't forget to subscribe to our Hey Pittsburgh newsletter for even more recommendations of great local events and activities. We will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you then. Okay, I'm sold. Let's make a plan to visit there together.
All right, I'll text you when we hang up.